morning, everyone, and thank you so much for choosing to spend your Wednesday morning here with us today. Out of all the things that I've learned in the past year, the most encouraging, I guess, and significant is that the First Minister sure knows how to pull a crowd, and gender equality does too. In November 2016, I was at an event a little bit smaller to this one, and it was on both of those themes. The First Minister was there, and it was on gender equality. It was a slightly smaller room with maybe about 100 people, and I had the opportunity after the panel discussion to speak to the First Minister for the first time. What she said to me has stuck with me over the past couple of years. And it's something that I think that we could all do with reminding ourselves daily and encouraging each other with these words. She told me that you can. She said, "You can do this. I believe in you." And why is that relevant today? Well, Girl Guiding Scotland released a study in 2018. And in the study, they found that girls aged 7 to 11 strongly felt and agreed that they could do anything. That was 61% of the people that they spoke to. But by the time they reached the age 18 to 25, only 39% of girls in Scotland believe that they can do anything. This is one of the many reasons why we are all here today. My name is Cara Brown, and I'm the International Legal Officer for the Children and Young People's Commissioner in Scotland. And I'm also the ginger one on the National Advisory Council on Women and Girls. Being invited by the First Minister to be part of this movement was a huge honour. That's an understatement. Gender equality is an issue that's close to my heart and something that I've been involved with for quite some years now as an activist. So I was, of course, delighted to accept and to give my time to this movement and to strengthen this cause. And along with the other 16 truly incredible and inspiring women and girls on the Advisory Council, we would like to welcome you here today. Joining me on stage is Amina Ahmed. She's taken time off between her prelims and her artwork to be here today, and she is our youngest Advisory Council member, and we're going to co-chair the event today. How are you enjoying your time on the Advisory Council?
It's good to be involved in because it's all about equality and I'm all about equality, so it's great. And you get to meet like loads of people like Cara and Katie and all my other friends, so it's good. I like it.
Good. I've really enjoyed it too, and I think that one of the best things about being part of the council has been meeting all of the women that we're working with and all of you in the circle. I have had some incredible support from Amina over the past year, and at times when I've doubted myself, she's been there on the end of the phone to say, "You can do it," and I've really appreciated that. So I phoned her a few weeks ago and said, "I will only do this if you're going to do it with me." So here we are. Those of you who've been to one of these events before will have been used to seeing the chair of the Advisory Council, Louise MacDonald, up here. Louise unfortunately can't be with us today as she is currently recovering from major surgery. She will be back with us soon though, and definitely in time for the 2019 topic of policy coherence.
So there's some practicalities to go through before we get started. There's no alarm test plan, so if you hear something then there's signs about. And feel free to chat about today on social media. The hashtag is Generation Equal and hashtag NACWG, and you should have a little reminder of these on your table as well. We also have a quiet room, a prayer room available if you'd like to go use it. Just let any of us know, and don't hesitate to ask. Also, we'll be taking photos and filming throughout, but if you don't want to be taking photos off or like all that, then that's fine. You can just let us know about that too. And we also have an incredibly talented illustrator, Linda Hunter, with us again today. She'll be capturing all the stuff that's going on and all that, so you can go chat to her. She likes mingling with people and all that as well.
Okay, before we move on, can I check how many of you have attended a National Advisory Council on Women and Girls Circle event before? Just a raise of hands. Okay, have. And can I see a show of hands for how many people it's your first time at an event like this? Ooh, okay, that's a good number. An equally warm welcome to all of you. As ever, the Advisory Council are thrilled at the incredible support that has grown since our inaugural meeting in December 2017. And whether this is your first meeting or not, today is a very interesting event, as we'll be focusing purely on the report, the 2018 report and recommendations, and exploring how we arrived at them. The report and recommendations were published on the 25th of January, and a link was circulated to everybody that day. So I hope that the advice that you got circulated last week, I hope that you'll have had a chance to at least look at the report. We're prepared to do a lot of work today around looking at how we got to those recommendations and discussing how each of us can be involved in taking them forward. As well as looking at the report and recommendations, this morning we'll have a performance, and this time it's the extremely talented Ellen Renton, something that we're really looking forward to. And our last speaker of the event today will be the First Minister, who will deliver the initial Scottish Government public response to the 2018 report and recommendations. So I hope that you agree we have a really exciting morning ahead. And let us start by reminding you of the context of our work and what we've achieved so far. Over to you.
So the First Minister's National Advisory Council on Women and Girls was formed as a catalyst for change to address gender inequality. By providing an independent voice to the First Minister, it was first proposed in the 2016/17 programme for the government, A Plan for Scotland. Our purpose is to drive action to encourage gender equality in Scotland, and our vision for Scotland to be recognised as a world leader for our commitment and actions toward realising an equal society where all women and girls can reach their true potential. We want gender inequality to become like a historical curiosity, and that's all, nothing less. Our meeting took place in December 2017, and that was when the Circle first met. Key questions were asked of the Circle that day, and based on outputs we formed our initial 3-year plan and agreed that our topics each year would be, in 2018, we'd look at attitudes and culture change, so in public life, in work and learning systems. In 2019, we'll be looking at policy coherence, so how is policy made and do policies work against each other? And then in 2020, we'll be creating an intersectional gender architecture for Scotland. We had three lively and rich meetings last year where we heard about attitudes and culture change from many perspectives, representing the rich intersectional nature of those committed to be part of positive change. And then in June last year, we saw the launch of Generation Equal and our digital platform. And it's here that we'd hold monthly spotlights on issues that affect women and girls, seeking feedback in the form of free circles, all the feedback we receive and summarised and shared with the Advisory Council and then put online for all of you to see. The outputs from all of this, along with that we explore with you, our circle, is considered when drafting our end of the year report. And during 2018, we were very conscious of extending our reach of the circle members. So last September, we tested holding satellite view circles alongside the main event, which went really well. We had taken on board the feedback from these sessions and are scaling these up over 2019. We would really like to be in the position of lots of satellite view circles taking place in parallel to the main one, so as many of you as possible across Scotland are feeding into our strategy. So that was a very quick story so far, and I hope it's helpful. Our first circle event of 2019, following this one, will begin looking at our topic of policy coherence and will take place on 28th of March in Dundee. So thank you all again for coming along today, whether this is your first time or not. This is us as the Advisory Council. We have now passed that milestone of our first report and set off the recommendations. Today we are focused on this report and recommendations and how, after exploring the topic of attitude and culture change with the over 2018. We arrived at what we did, so big thank you to all of you. Your participation in this movement is extremely important, as it is to you who play the biggest role in the change required.
Thanks, Amina. So now we're going to have a look at the recommendations in the report. Amina just set the context, and now I'll move on to explore the 2018 report and recommendations, We've supplied a few printed copies on your tables in case you didn't bring one of your own. There'll also be information up on the slideshow. Before I start discussing the 2018 report and recommendations, we have a little visual for you. We have used the footage from our events over 2018 to create a short film to celebrate the report. We really like it, and we hope that you do too. It represents the journey that we as an advisory council have been on up until now. It's been an epic year for the First Minister's National Advisory Council on Women and Girls, which all started when the First Minister chose key members to form our council. With our circle of over 550 allies, we explored our first year's topic of attitudes and culture change. We also looked at a different equality spotlight every month to gather insights from the Scottish public. We've already created change, with a commitment to the next and future programmes for government being gender sensitive. With your ideas, we submitted our first report to the First Minister. If this is what we can achieve in a year, imagine what we can do in years to come.
Change is not only possible, it is really needed.
You need to be hosting change and curating ideas.
But this is just the start, and we can't do it alone. Have your say on our New Year's topic of policy coherence. Together, we are Generation Equal. We hope that you agree that that captures the energy and the effort of everybody involved in this movement so far. I'll now move on to focus on the report and specifically the recommendations. But I want to make this point at the outset. There should be no surprises in any of this, because it was what was produced based on what we talked about and what you've been telling us over the past year as we explored this topic of attitudes and culture change. What we as an advisory council have done is listen to you. We heard your frustrations and experiences, and we heard loud and clear that the appetite for change is very much alive. We used our collective experiences to help compile everything you told us in these strategic recommendations. We're not experts, but what we are is 16 women with wide-ranging experiences and skills. We listened, clarified, and using all your outputs, we constructed what was published on the 25th of January. Our vision for Scotland is to be recognised as a leading nation in the pursuit of gender equality. We believe that gender equality is a must-have for Scotland, not a distant dream. Our view as a council is that it will be achieved through systemic change, and that change needs to be a story of agency and hope. We absolutely believe that gender equality is possible, that we can together. It is up to all of us to set the expectation that we can do this and create a movement that demands change for a greater good. And it's important to remind everyone that we're not a delivery body. We're an advisory council to the First Minister. So the how aspect of these report recommendations is for the government, it's for the public, private and third sector, and for us all to help achieve. As the year progressed and we explored our topic, the circle's outputs seemed to fit nicely into three categories. The first was leadership, accountability, and creating change. And this is how we ended up structuring the recommendations in the report. We've listened to what you've told us about the need for more visibility on these issues and about how hard it can be to challenge gender inequality at an individual level in your organisations and at every meeting and in every discussion about the critical role for education systems. I just want to take this moment to reiterate what we've said in the report, that we understand that gender is not only limited to two identities, but for today, you might notice us refer to gender in the binary. There's a little more information in the report itself on this. So first up is leadership. You told us that leadership, language, using current systems effectively, or seeking more powers and having a stronger local voice in Scotland was key. You told us that we need to tackle social norms and allow challenge where needed. And the people of Scotland need to feel empowered and confident in knowing what is appropriate and how to challenge. You told us that the language that we use needs to be both backed up by evidence and to speak to everybody. We need to work hard at uncovering this entrenched issue for the regular person and not turn them off in that process. We already know a lot and we can learn from other movements. You also told us that ensuring we made the best of what we already know and applying learning was key. There's some fantastic work already happening across Scotland. But are we utilising this knowledge and the outcomes effectively and working smarter? Or is the good work just happening in pockets and positive aspects not being shared? You told us that those in power in Scotland had to lead by example and be seen to be dedicated to the issue of gender inequality and lifting the value of women and girls. And that needed to translate into direct action across all spheres of government. You told us that the 50-50 cabinet is fantastic, but where else do we see this? And if it isn't seen or the demand for it felt, how is society ever going to adopt a change in attitudes towards this? And if the structures in place to set standards at the highest levels of public service, locally and nationally, didn't concentrate on gender too and are visibly seen to, then that won't be adopted as a key priority. Moving on to accountability. You told us that we needed to take the structural and power balances that place different genders on different pedestals and tackle the unconscious bias, and that this means more than demanding everyone undertakes an unconscious bias course, which we are led to believe is futile anyway. You told us that we need our public services to lead the way here and to share their learnings. You told us that we need someone to rise to the occasion and take this on, and we need to understand the peculiarities of different environments, and that this needs to be systemic and from top to bottom of an organisation. Public sector, third sector and business need to understand what being gender competent and gender sensitive means, and they need to embrace this. We are very excited about this recommendation and sharing learnings. You told us that we need organisations to accept that it is their responsibility to prioritise this and to help them understand the benefit. And in turn, that behaviour change will impact across workforces and start to be adopted. You told us that messages needed to be targeted at different sectors of society in order to be effective. In fact, a lot of what you called for in the outputs of the year was related to awareness or campaigning. Yes, as an advisory council, we believe that it's important, but we strongly believe that systemic change and changes to the structures that are in place are the crucial first step. Tackling the many layers of violence against women and girls was a constant and sobering feature in the outputs from circle meetings. Both making gender inequality and all forms of violence socially shunned, but also putting in place the systems that supported this attitude and specifically supported challenge. Making it universally known that what is accepted and what to do if behaviour needs to be challenged, and a common understanding of how to protect our women and girls from this violence. We cannot go on traumatising women and girls who are already traumatised, and we can't expect any change in the value of women and girls if our systems do not support it universally. We understand that media regulations are reserved, but again and again, standards in the media came up in your outputs, and you told us that acceptable standards are not only key to reinforcing women and girls' value in society, but also key in tackling the misogynistic and sexist attitudes towards them. That the jokes and underhand misogyny, along with the blatant, is fueled by the media, and that this maintains the undervalued nature of women and girls in our society. Although the Advisory Council understand the challenges of this recommendation, we believe that Scotland can work creatively and powerfully within these challenges and make a difference. Finally, creating conditions. You told us that gender stereotyping begins pre-birth, and we agreed, and that an overhaul of the information provided to parents along with the structures in place for education and learning needs to change. You also told us that as well as working on the generations to come, these messages need to be backed up by systems in place. Otherwise, our education system will be teaching our children one thing, and then they go home to a different attitude. But with a whole systems approach to degendering services and overhauling the understanding of our workforce, and providing them with the confidence to challenge where needed and reinforce, we can put those structures in place and make those changes. You told us how we can both teach new generations and work on re-educating current ones at all levels. Key to this, of course, is our education system, which is one of the biggest influences in our children's lives at those critical learning periods. You told us many things, including that education needs to start pre-birth, and these messages continuing throughout the whole delivery of services until children reach formal education. You told us that our workforce needed to feel confident to challenge behaviour when it fell below the standard, and that girls and boys and all children needed to understand in an age-appropriate way what about boundaries and consent from an early age. You also told us that CLD and youth work needs to be included as they are part of the education and learning community that supports children and young people. We are confident that an Education Commission looking at all aspects of education and learning will ensure that Scotland is a world leader on this issue. You also told us that a huge barrier to women's value and place in society was how the systems in place proved to be a barrier to supporting women to remain in the workforce or return to the workforce while juggling parenthood. You told us that the provision of meaningful childcare was key, and that recent changes, although welcomed, are not enough to be meaningful. We heard that the reality was childcare remains to be a huge barrier for women, and that women need to be supported more with their return to work. You also told us that we could learn a lot from our neighbours by encouraging men to share childcare with a meaningful allowance in relationships where that is relevant. And finally, you told us that Scotland is developing new and exciting ways of developing policy through the National Performance Framework and new devolved powers. So gender equality needs to be at the heart of how that policy work is developed from the very beginning. I hope that this quick run through of the 2018 report and recommendations has been helpful. Although, as I said in the beginning, there will hopefully be no surprises in there, as this is what we've all been talking about over the past year. We hope that we've done you justice and turned all your outputs and into recommendations that are worthy of the challenge that the system change requires. The report also noted a few other areas during our sessions, and there's more information on these in the copies on your table. The first was procurement, the potential of using procurement systems to embed gender equality across supply chains. The second was the Scottish Business Pledge, the potential to enhance that already existing pledge to encourage businesses across Scotland to take bolder action. The third was better data and analysis, the potential of more effective collation and intersectional analysis to help us understand the picture in Scotland more and inform policy and decision making. And then there was gender budgeting and economics. The potential of the strategic recognition of gender equality can lead to far greater inclusive growth. We understand the complexity and interconnectedness of each of these areas, and we also understand that some work is underway through the forthcoming Gender Pay Gap Action Plan and other collaborative work around gender budgeting and data, etc. We of course welcome this work and will be keeping a close eye on it as a council. But we are in no doubt that each of these require bold leadership, with the necessary support, infrastructure and political will to go with the action plans being developed, and we called on the First Minister to prioritise the work in these areas. We're going to move on now, but there'll be an opportunity to continue this conversation during the break and of course over lunch. For now, it's a real privilege To introduce our performance for this morning, Ellen Renton. Do you want to see who she is?
Ellen is a poet based in Edinburgh. Since her first performance in 2015, she has read her work at venues including the Royal Albert Hall, Lee Theatre, the Camden Roundhouse and the Scottish Parliament. Her writing has been featured by Young Scot and BBC Radio Scotland. She is the winner of the Time and Now Prize in association with COP21 and is recipient of the Time to Shine Nurturing Talent Fund. She holds a Master's in Creative Writing, Poetry from the University of East Anglia, and is a member of the spoken word theatre company in the works. Ellen's performance will be a short series of gender-focused poems. Please join me in welcoming Ellen to the stage.